America, stop rushing your life away just to catch a TV show. Get a Sony Betamax video recorder and automatically videotape that show while you're doing something else and watch it anytime you want. Sony Betamax. It could change your whole way of life.
Well, howdy, folks, and welcome to the Wacky World Drive-In. And with me, as always, is the fantastic Mr. Vincent.
Hey, everybody. It's really great to be back as usual, and I think this is really going to be a good episode. Well, they're all good, but this is going to be an extra good one.
Yeah, I think this one's a little extra juicy.
Yeah, me and Rob always kind of get together and bat around ideas back and forth, and Rob came up with this one, and this is really going to be a cool one.
Well, you came up with half of it.
That's true, yeah, but this is going to be a good one.
And then to start, actually, someone else came up with, I guess, a third of it, and that would be, our favorite listener, and that would be Riccardo Dessini. And he gave us a suggestion on Twitter, and we liked it, and we're definitely going to use it. And basically, he put the question forward to us that we could basically make a movie of any franchise, any property, anything we wanted, and cast it ourselves with actors or actresses from any time period and any time period in their careers. What would we do? He asked us to do 3, but I think we're only doing 2 each. So why don't you get us started, Mr. Vincent?
Okay, my first one actually is the Dunwich Horror. It's one of my favorite Lovecraft stories, and it was done as a movie once that has its good points and its bad points, but I kind of reimagined it as a strict retelling of the book, and my cast for that one is, for Old Wizard Whately, I want Ian McCallum.
Oh, good choice.
For Henry Armitage, I want Peter Cushing.
Ah, good choice as well.
And for Wilbur Whately, I want Matthew McGorry from the Rob Zombie movies.
Wow, that is a great casting for him, because the book speaks often, or the story speaks often, of his kind of otherworldly oddness.
Yes, and in a special cameo, I know maybe a lot of people knew this was coming, but for Lavina Whately, the old wizard daughter, I wanted a special cameo, Rosalba Neary.
Well, there you go. I mean, that's a fine casting right there. And we'll take it a step further. Who would you have direct said piece?
Probably Guillermo del Toro.
Okay,
if I had to pick a new director, probably for an old director, I would go for Mario Bava.
Oh, yeah, very good choice. Speaking of him, I like Umberto Bava. That's his son, right?
Yes, he's done some really good giallos and slashers.
Yeah, I like his work quite a bit as well. That's a talented family right there.
Yes, yeah, he picked up a lot of good stuff from his dad. I think he helped his dad out on a lot of his dad's later films, so he definitely got a good education.
So that original Dunwich Horror you spoke of, is that the one with guy from Quantum Leap? His name is escaping me at the moment.
Oh, it's got Dean Stockwell.
Dean Stockwell, yeah.
Yes, and it's got some good stuff and it's got some bad stuff in it. It's a guilty pleasure for me, but I still think we need the definitive Dunwich Horror.
I agree. Because, yeah, that's one I saw, and it's so kind of far removed from the source material, it almost isn't the Dunwich Horror, but it had a great look and feel to it.
Yeah, it's definitely a product of the 60s.
Okay,
all
so
right.
What's yours?
So my first one, and I'm actually just kind of jumping right off the back of what Ricardo said, and he did his casting of Vampirella.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the classic what if one if you're a horror fan.
And I liked his casting. I did have to look up
yes.
some of those names, but when I saw them, I was pretty pleased. But I wanted to do my own. So first, as Vampirella herself, I got to go with Kari Werher, who I've spoken about before on the podcast even.
Oh, yeah.
An all-time favorite of mine. And I would take her from about the time period in which she did that Hellraiser movie. I forget which number it was, but it was actually the last Hellraiser movie I really liked too, I think. But she had the black hair and it was straight, and I just think she would have made a great Vampirella at that time period.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then for Pendragon, her sidekick, the magician character, no other person popped into my mind. Even when I'm reading the comics, it's his voice I hear. It's Roddy McDowall.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I see where you're coming from on that.
And then for Van Helsing himself, sorry, I got to go with the classic and Peter Cushing. I mean, there is only one Van Helsing for me, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
Peter Cushing. And this is my dream casting, so I'm getting my dream Van Helsing, and that's Peter Cushing. And then for Adam Van Helsing, I think that was his name, his son, who
Yes.
Vampy later ended up with, I'm going David Selby, who played Quentin Collins on Dark
Oh,
Shadows.
yeah. Cool. I like that.
I'm currently watching Dark Shadows, and the Quentin Collins, I mean, Barnabas Collins is the standout character, but I'd say Quentin Collins is very close in just great standout character as well.
He is. Yeah, yeah. We're going to definitely have to revisit that on a future podcast.
And then for the Blood Red Queen of Hearts, I'm going
Ooh.
off the beaten path a little bit and casting a model. And that's Veronica, I guess it's Zemanova. She was kind of the very exotic looking. She started out with Playboy and then started doing slightly harder stuff. Not super harder stuff, but slightly harder stuff. But I think she would be a fantastic. Not the right hair color, but you can dye her hair red.
Cool. I like those choices, Rob. That's kind of something off the beaten path. I enjoy that. I'd go see that movie.
Well, thank you much. Yeah. And as far as direction, I actually did not even think about that in advance. But I mean, oh, there's so many people that I think that could do it justice.
Yeah, yeah.
Really a lot of the Hammer guys, whoever did Vampire Lovers, perhaps.
Yeah, Roy Ward Baker. Yeah, yeah. Well, that was kind of an unrealized Hammer project. It was, one that they had been knocking around for years at the end.
Hmm. All right. So what's your next one?
My last one, this is kind of maybe more of a reimagining of a cast. I mean, it's based on a classic book, but it's a movie I really, really enjoy, but I have a real problem with the leads in it. And it's the 1992 Francis Ford Coppola Dracula.
Okay.
I love the movie. I love the music, the set design, Gary Oldman. But every time Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder show up, it just takes me out of that film.
It's I don't really like to get negative, but it's rough.
And I love Anthony Hopkins, but he is not Van Helsing.
And his performance is really rough in that one as well.
It is. So I kind of like the whole just ambiance and look of the movie, and this is kind of what I would do with it. For Mina, I want Edwige Finch.
A great choice.
For Jonathan Harker, I want Timothy Dalton.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And for Lucy, Mina's friend who gets vampirized, I want Barbara Bouchette.
I actually just kind of sort of discovered her recently on the Star Trek episode.
Yes, that was right before she went over to Italy. She did that.
Yeah.
And for Van Helsing, I want Herbert Lom.
Okay, I know the name. Refresh me.
He played. He was in all the Pink Panther movies. He was Peter Sellers' superior, who was always what was his Dreyfus.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen those since
And
the
he was
theater.
in Phantom of the Opera, the Hammer Phantom of the Opera. He played the lead in that, and he was Captain Nemo in Mysterious Island, the Ray Harryhausen movie.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any of the. Well, I mean, I've seen the Pink Panther ones when I was very small,
Then
but I
he
don't
was
think I've seen those
also
other
in
two.
The Sect, the Mikel Salvino film.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to look him up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's always been one of my favorite kind of character actors. Then as a special bonus for the 3 vampire brides, Dracula's brides, I want Erica Blanc,
Oh yeah,
Marissa Mel,
another good choice.
and Helga Line.
Okay, I don't know the last one.
She's Spanish horror.
Okay.
Yeah, I went mostly with the just older people on mine, the people from my stuff I enjoy. But yeah, so that's kind of my dream Dracula cast, and still Francis Ford Coppola directing.
So let's say you had to recast Gary Oldman.
That's a rough one, just because the many of the when I think of Dracula, I think of Christopher Lee and a new Dracula.
It doesn't necessarily. You could put Christopher Lee in there if you wanted. It's your dream movie.
Yeah, I got to go with Christopher Lee. He's my Dracula.
Darn right. There you go. That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so for my next one, then I went with basically I want a good film adaptation of my favorite novel series of all time, and that is The Dark Tower. I mean, yes, we got a film, but it
Oh,
was
yeah.
so far removed. I mean, it, I can't even, you can barely even call it The Dark Tower. It was just so far out in left field. But I want a good adaptation. And in this good adaptation, the main character, Roland, would be played by the guy who he was based upon, and that would be Clint Eastwood from the Man with No
Yep.
Name time
Yep.
period. Yeah, because Stephen King has said that Roland he's basically a mixture of Blondie, or the Man with No Name, and himself. But
Oh, okay.
so I
Yeah, I
would
could definitely
base,
see that.
and I would just kind of get it, and I would want Sergio Leone to direct it, to have that good, the bad, the ugly kind of look and feel to it, but Dark Tower with all the Dark Toweriness. And then as his adversary, Randall Flagg, I would go with Kurt Russell.
Oh, that's a good choice. Yeah, I could
Because
see Kurt.
Because one thing about Randall Flagg is, yeah, he's crazy evil, but he's supposed to be very likable at the same time. Kind of like, I thought the guy who played Flagg in the Stand miniseries back in the 90s did a really good job because he was evil, but you really liked him. And I
Yes.
think Kurt Russell, in kind of similar personality style to Stuntman Mike from Death Proof, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that would be a great flag. And
I can see
it'd be younger Kurt, around Escape from New
New
York
York
era.
Kurt. Yeah, yeah, I could definitely see that.
And then for Detta slash Odetta slash Susanna, I would go, and of course this is the obvious choice for me. I knew everyone probably knew I was gonna pick her for something, and that'd be Laura Gemser.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah.
And then for Eddie, which would be is Roland's kind of sidekick from the real world. This is a off the beaten path choice, but I picked Mark Paul Gosler from basically Zach from Saved by the Bell. I just really like that dude. I think he's funny. He's very underrated kind of talent, and a lot of the stuff he's gone on and done since Saved by the Bell, he's always good in it. And I think he could just, given the chance, do like a serious, gritty role, but still with that little bit of snark. I think he would knock it out the park.
Well, that's a great pick. Yeah, that's real interesting. And I think for something like that, that would almost have to be like a multi-part series, correct?
Oh
To do
yeah,
that right.
the
Yeah.
books alone, there's like seven, I think, of them, and those last few are huge. So they would probably take multiple movies in and of themselves. But since this is my dream project, I think we probably get about 10 movies to make the series. Come
Yeah.
close.
Probably, yeah. Stephen King can write some big books.
And then finally, the Crimson King, the big guy that everything leads
Yeah.
up to, and where great minds stink alike, Ian McKellen.
Oh, yep, yep, yep.
The Dark Tower, it's an interesting series. A lot the fans are very divided. Like a lot of them don't care for the later stuff in the series. But see, to me, that's when it really starts to pick up and when it really gets good, when they start jumping over all the different worlds and he starts crossing over his different characters from different stories, and he even incorporates himself and his near-death experience as a big plot point in one of the later Dark Tower books. Fantastic stuff. Great writing, unique. I don't really get why people rag on that later stuff so much.
That was kind of one of my favorite things about the books was just how all those little things you kept picking up from all like previous from the Stephen King world, like Father Callahan from Salem's Lot shows up, and it's just all these little things he drops in all over the place. I thought was really cool.
And other pop culture references, like he's a big J.K. Rowling fan. And so there's several little Harry Potter nods throughout the Dark Tower as well.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, those are definitely good. I've got those sitting in my bookcase right now.
Of course, we won't say in case anyone here hasn't read them, but what did you think? Did you like the ending, or did you think it was a ripoff like a lot of people claim?
I like the ending. I thought it brought it to a nice, I mean, it was maybe somewhat derivative, but I thought, I didn't feel cheated or disgruntled or anything at the end. I was satisfied.
I was too, and it kind of leaves it open. Like I kind of hope he'll go back and write another last book, like the final trip through the Dark Tower, like the last venture. I think that'd be
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Well,
All
that
right,
was
and
fun. And a
yeah,
big thank out to Ricardo. I think he's One Cheap Army on Twitter, and he does some really cool artwork too. So I suggest you really check him out.
I was going to give him a shout out this episode anyway, because I don't know if you are aware, but in issue 67 of Tessa, he told me it rhymes with Zeus. So I'm going to say Theus or Theus. But he
Okay.
said rhymes with Zeus. So Tessa Theus in issue 67, not only does my little fancy singing group have a cameo in the letters page at the end, there's a nice little mention of this very podcast and you yourself.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow. Which magazine was this again?
The newest issue of his comic, the Tessa
Oh,
Theus.
his comic. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
hmm So yeah, I wanted to thank him again for that, and thought it was super cool. Not only because actually being in a comic, that's dream come true kind of stuff right there. But then just the nice words he had to say about the podcast, very cool.
He's always been a really big supporter, and we really, really appreciate him. But that's great about the comic. That is, man, mentioned in a comic book. I can die happy now.
Yeah, it's issue 67. If you want to go, it's not in print form yet. I think it's only digital at the moment, but I know at one point he was working on kind of an uber nice graphic novels kind of remastered version of everything. So I'm kind of hoping the whole series goes through so I can actually collect them in paperback form.
That would be fun to get some graphic novels, yeah, because I do enjoy his stuff. He has a real great style to his artwork.
And with that, we'll actually get to the episode as planned. And actually, we didn't discuss which aspect of it we want to begin with first. So why don't you begin us?
Let's start off with, we were going to do one on video stores. What it was like to kind of go to video stores, the whole video store atmosphere. Then I think this will lead into the second part of our podcast.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well, man.
Okay, so let's start off with the video store thing then. That's something that a lot of people look at with a lot of nostalgia, and rightly so. It was kind of like a great little just experience and trip to go to your local video store and pick something out, because it was a commitment. This wasn't streaming where you could watch it for 5 minutes and say, this sucks, and turn it off. You made a commitment. You paid for this. You brought it home. You put it in your VCR, and you were going to watch it.
Yeah. And this is a topic I've actually spoken about at great length, but I just never get tired of talking about this one. I'm going to talk about it again because I just love talking about it. Yeah, that's one of my best childhood memories, is just going to, and not even necessarily video stores. A lot of my early renting experiences were not at video stores.
Yeah, because drugstores had them and everything.
My parents they went with Betamax. So we initially had Betamax, and they'd paid so much for the Betamax that they didn't want to just turn around and get a VCR or a VHS immediately after. So we were kind of stuck with the Betamax for a while. And there was only one place in town that rented Betamax tapes, and it was an appliance store, an electronics store. And in the back, they had a little section for movies. And I would go there and rent the movies there. And I remember half of the side was the Betamax and the other half was the VHS. And there was always so much more over on the VHS side than on the Betamax side.
Yeah, I remember I found this video kind of a tucked away video department. When I used to live in Los Angeles for my job, once a week I had to drive way up into the valley from Orange County. Then one day I just stopped at this little party store, convenience store, to get something to drink, and they had a little video section stuck in the back. I said, well, I'll check this out. And it was like the video section of my dreams. They had all the something weird video stuff there. It was just all this, all the wizard stuff, all the weird horror stuff. So I would actually rent stuff, and I'd have to keep it a week, because when I drove back up there next Wednesday, I'd return it. So I ended up paying like a week's rental for these tapes, but they were so worth it because it was stuff that you could not find anywhere else.
Yeah, and that leads me to the next big place that I used to rent from. It was almost the exact same thing. It was a gas station right across from my neighborhood, and they had in the front a tiny little videotape thing. There couldn't have been more than 100 tapes on that thing. It's just a little video thing. And because they were a gas station, I guess they just got the most obscure stuff because it was cheap, because videotapes back then were expensive.
Especially the mainstream stuff, yeah.
Yeah. So they would have the most obscure stuff. Like, that's the first place I saw Burial Ground. rented it there. Jailhouse Rock, I remember renting that one there. Just all kinds of just like obscure little titles got there.
Yeah, and it was cool too about video stores. It was kind of like, back in the, movie days, back in the where the poster would kind of draw you a lot of times into the movie, the video box art, and they would keep making these huge boxes that would like stand out on the shelf, I guess, with these, and you would see like paintings and stuff on the covers. And that was like my first introduction to like Jess Franco and stuff, even though it was not credited to Jess Franco. Like I think Female Vampire was titled like Eroto Kill on video or something like that. And you would just rent this stuff and take it home, and it looked like it was from like a different, universe.
So this little convenience store in LA that you spoke of, do you remember any real standouts that you rented there? Like anything that's just really just a good memory of, oh, I rented blank there.
Well, this is actually kind of people who know this about me, but actually I went up there and I rented, they had the Something Weird video, and this would probably have been in the early 80s. Maybe mid 80s. They had the Something Weird video of the Seducers.
Wow, that's a great
and I took
choice,
that thing
man.
home and I watched that and I said, "Oh my God!" And I've got to find out more. And that was one of the keystones of my Rose Albineri obsession. But that's the one that sticks out for me. That, and also renting. They had some of the Andy Milligan stuff too.
So wait, real quick, Seducers. That's the Jerry Gross cut, correct?
Yes, with the extra fun stuff in it.
That's tough because you actually made me copies of those. And it's like the Seducers, the quality is so much poorer, but it's so much better a cut, I thought.
It's a lot smoother and it works a lot better. And it just, I don't know if there's any decent material around anywhere, but that's kind of my lifelong dream, is a really nice Blu-ray of that cut.
Yo, that is a good kind of wish list Blu-ray to have right there.
Yeah, but it was fun just, picking stuff up, and exploring stuff like that. And I had a great time. And I actually was lucky. I got to work in a couple video stores.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. That is cool. Because, yeah, by the time I got of working age, the mom and pop places were gone. It was all just chain places. And the chain places, though great, I'd take them back in a second, just didn't have that same charm that mom and pop type places had, I feel.
Yeah, and I also got a story about working at one that, we can use later in the show for our second part, but it was fun. I enjoyed working there, especially, you work late on Saturday night and Friday nights when everything new was gone and people would come in and, "Oh, I need something to watch." Let me show you what to watch. You need to get this.
Oh, let me show you, kid.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
you're slightly older than I am. So our hitting the video store memory, like the experience is slightly different. Like with mine, I remember it was always Friday afternoons after school. My mom would pick me up from school and we'd head to either that gas station or later a video store or just whatever it was that we were renting out at the time and get movies for the weekend. And then we'd take them back on Sunday.
Yeah. That's what I did. Most of my movies I got after I moved out, so I was kind of on my own. We didn't do a lot of the family viewing thing, but I would just go usually on Friday night and hit the horror section and just, "Ooh, I haven't seen this, I haven't seen this, I haven't seen this," and just get loaded up and go back home.
Well, see, you definitely, I think, had the better end of the stick on that variety because being a kid, somewhat limited to what my mom would let me rent to begin with, and what I had the nerve to actually ask to rent, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, yeah. But it was a lot of stuff, fun stuff to explore, and it was always like the big decision when you go in there, because it was like, do I take this? Do I take this? What? Yeah.
I tell you, I've often said, "Oh, there's a very loud truck outside." What I've often said that if I had a time machine, I would be one of the worst people to give a time machine to because I would be so selfish. I mean, I'd go back to the 80s, 70s and 80s and early 90s mostly, and basically just hit toy stores, video game stores, and video stores and see stuff in the theater. I mean, that essentially would be my time machining.
Yeah, yeah. And another great thing too in video stores, I mean, I know you like myself concentrated on the horror section a lot, but the action section was just full. I mean, you could find all the old Hong Kong movies that you had, and Cynthia Rothrock and everything. That was kind of a new world waiting to discover too, was action movies.
Oh, for sure, and for sure, and especially in the '90s when kind of the Scream era hit, and I started drifting way away from horror movies at that point. I mean, of course, didn't give them up completely because there's still great stuff coming, but just by and large, oh, that's a lot of when I started digging into the Hong Kong films and the Jackie Chans, the Yin Biaos, the Sammo Hungs, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, then there's all the the Conan knockoffs and stuff, and
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, great stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean, all my life, Conan and Conan style movies definitely been one of my favorite genres of film. Matter of fact, my favorite of that, I guess, the sword and sorcery, is not even Conan. It's the Barbarian, starring the Barbarian brothers.
Oh yeah, were they the ones that were the twins?
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that one. I always liked the Sorceress,
Yeah, that's a
the New
great.
World one, and Sword and the Sorcerer is another good one. Yeah,
So,
this could be another future podcast.
Sorceress. Was that Jim Wynorski? Who did that? Or Dave Dakota? I always get.
I think it's Jim Wynorski. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was the
that's
one with the girl with the two girls, the twins.
twins as well. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and the
yeah.
very creepy little satyr guy.
Yes, that guy was creepy.
I tell you, Barbarians, I taped that off cable and just had my VHS taped off cable tape for years and years. Watched it so many times. That was one of my holy grail movies that when it finally came out on DVD, I snatched that one right up.
Oh, I didn't know it was out on DVD.
Yeah, it's a double feature. It's Barbarians and what is the Norseman, I think is the other one. The other
Oh,
one.
with Lee Majors,
Yeah,
the Vikings versus the Indians.
yeah. That's
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
well, cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. But video stores, it was great. And I think back too on all the, which again, you talk about a time machine when you walk in there, just all the promotional material, like the
Yeah.
posters and the standees. Like when I worked at the video store, I just think now of all the stuff I threw in the dumpster.
Oh, ouch.
Like, Elvira standees and, because back then it was kind of like, I saved some stuff, but it was just, I'd come in and what happened to the standee? Oh, we threw it in the garbage. It's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's tough. Yeah,
yeah.
I remember speaking of that specifically. At one point, the mom and pops were gone in my hometown, and it came down to movie gallery or Blockbuster. And it's like, yeah, movie gallery didn't have quite as big a selection, but their movies weren't censored. That was always the problem with Blockbusters. They cut their movies severely in some cases. Like the Dead Alive from Blockbuster. I mean, yowzer, is it cut? Like when I actually finally saw it uncut, it was like a different movie almost. But so we would still go to movie gallery just because it was better in that sense. And I remember when Nightbreed first came out, they had just this table with full size movie posters from it they were giving away, and these little pamphlets with like character bios and information about the movie. Just really cool. I still have those pamphlets somewhere.
Oh, neat. Yeah, yeah. That was always just, the fun thing about they would always a lot of times have giveaways. The studios would give you stuff to give away and everything. And it was, yeah, it wasn't just, I mean, watching the movie was fun, but kind of going to the video store was a lot of, was a big part of it too, just the whole experience.
Jumping back to I was talking about the electronics place that we used to get movies. I have some distinct memories from that one as well, even though I was small. I remember The Beast Within. I would always see that cover and I would always want to rent it. And my mom was like, "No, we rented that. You didn't like it." I have no memory of renting that movie. I think she just didn't want to rent it for whatever reason. But would always see that cover and then the back cover, the guy with his creepy eyes. And I still to this day don't think I've ever seen that movie, but it just holds a fascination for me from that time period.
Oh, yeah, if that's the one I'm thinking of, that is a good one.
Like the cover, it's kind of a sketch, a silhouette of the guy with his hands out, and he has like the clawed fingers, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, yeah. The one cover I always remember, it was a Wizard Video one, and it was for a Jess Franco film. It was the Wizard Video of it was called think it was Revenge in the House of Usher.
Hmm.
And then it had a picture on the cover. It said, like, based on the Edgar Allan Poe classic story. And on the cover, it had that girl, like, in a pink miniskirt getting menaced by a guy with an electric drill. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't remember this in Edgar Allan Poe.
Come on, there was lots of electric drills
Yeah.
in Edgar Allan Poe, though, to be fair.
Yeah. But those old wizard boxes were great. The one
Oh,
for
yeah.
Zombie and stuff, the Lucia Fulci one.
Yeah, I only own two big box tapes, and they're both adult films from the 90s. I don't own any, like, good old school, like, Wizard Video big box things.
Yeah, this is a bit of a mercenary story by me, but I had a bunch of those. And probably about 10 years ago, I sold them on eBay just because I was at the point now where I had all these DVDs and I said, I'm never going to watch these. And I sold them, and the amount of money I got for them I thought it was obscene to take it. But people paid for them, and I took a nice little vacation on it, so I was happy.
Just imagine what you would get today, though.
Yeah. But, I got rid of them and got a good price for them, so I'm happy. And if I kept them, they'd be sitting up in a box upstairs now. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm
Oh,
happy.
good. I'm glad it's not too much regret in the story.
No regrets.
And I tell you, I remember the very last Betamax tape I ever rented before we moved on to VHS. And that was, and I always forget the name every time I tell this story. It's something about time, the day that time did something. It's kind of a sci-fi movie. I think it was 70s, where this family goes out to this house in the desert, and all this crazy stuff. It's a good movie. All this crazy stuff starts going on. Like, there's two, like, stop motion monsters fighting outside at one point. There's UFOs, and it's just a crazy movie, but thoroughly enjoyed it.
Wow. I had a beta machine too at some point that somebody gave me. So I was doing dual formats because I think the way it worked was beta was supposed to be, it was the better format, correct?
Correct. Yep.
But I think, who was it? Sony wouldn't license it out or something like that. So everyone went with VHS.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that movie, it doesn't ring a bell.
Not offhand, no.
It's like The Day That Time Forgot, or I know they did a Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode about it as well.
Huh. That's something we'll have to research later.
I think you dig that one too, if you find it.
It sounds good. Yeah, I'm always up for 70 stop motion and stuff. So yeah. It wasn't a TV movie. Was it a theatrical movie?
I'm pretty sure it's theatrical, yeah.
May have to check that out.
So let me ask you if you remember. I know this is hard to pinpoint. I can't remember, but do you remember the last movie you ever rented before this kind of resurgence here recently with the Draft House and stuff? But like back in the day, the last movie you rented before the demise of the video store.
We still had a video store here up till a few years ago that did DVDs, of course. We had North American Video, but they finally all closed. It was the last indie one. I remember renting stuff from there, but the last one, man, I don't remember.
I'll tell you, the last one I remember renting, which may not be the case, but the last one I actually remember going in and getting was from 2020 Video in Hollywood. And that was it was the Fulci movie about the nuns. Is it Demonia?
Demonia.
Demonia. Yeah, that was the last one I remember actually renting.
Yeah, I do remember renting. I think they had it as a Japanese import. This may have been one of the last ones I rented there. They had as a Japanese import, they had Kill Bill. And it was the Japanese version that had it wasn't done in black and white, that section.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah, so I remember that may have been the last one. It was a DVD, of course, but that may have been the last thing I actually rented at a video store.
And the last VHS I can remember renting, which it's probably not the case, but the last one I can remember renting was one of those Seduction Cinema movies. It was a Misty Monday one about like giant bugs or something.
Oh, I used to rent those because a lot of times they would put the new Misty Mundane one on, then they would give you the older one that they based it on too.
Okay.
like if it was a remake. So I remember renting some of those.
Yeah, I used to rent a lot of those. I mean, they weren't particularly great, but there was just something novel about them.
Yeah, she was cranking them out for a while.
Yeah, I wonder whatever happened to that whole, because yeah, like you said, I mean, that company, I mean, they were just, you go to any video store and they were just slam full of those titles, but I haven't heard anything about any of those in a long time.
I remember going when I used to go up to the chiller conventions up in New Jersey. They always had a huge table set up, and yeah, they were gigantic for a while.
Yeah. I guess just with the days of, rentals going away and now that there's no Skinamax anymore and just that kind of stuff, it's just unfortunately a lost art.
Yeah. Too bad. But yeah,
Yep.
but it was good times.
Good times indeed. So before we move on to the next subtopic of the topic, any other specific video rental store memories that really stand out for you?
Um, no, not, just nothing special. Just, again, just finding, great stuff. Like you said, I remember renting those Jackie Chan movies. I remember the first one I rented was a Police Story.
Oh,
And
that's a great one.
yeah, that part at the beginning with the car chase where they go down that hill through that little like shanty town.
Hmm.
I just remember watching that and just it was one of those like jaw-dropping moments where I finished the movie, ran over to the video store probably on Saturday morning and said, "What other Jackie Chan do you have? I want everything."
Okay, well, here's a question. Do you remember the different video stores had the different methods of their videos? Like, for example, that gas station I spoke of would have the cover alone out on the rack if it was there. And you would take the cover up to the counter, and then they had the videos behind the counter, and they would put the cover behind the counter and give you the video. Then there was the ones where they actually just had the video behind the cover itself that you would just take up. Which did you have a preference in the two?
Not really. The ones I remember going to and the ones I worked at, we always just had like the kind of the cover with like a piece of styrofoam inside it or something. And you
Hmm.
would take the cover up because I guess they wanted to keep the tapes behind, out of the reach of the customers till they actually rented them.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely merits to both systems, but I do recall as a kid in the places where the tape would just be behind the cover, you'd see the cover, but then the tape wouldn't be there. And it'd be like, oh man, at least if it was just the cover version where they had the tapes behind the thing, behind the counter, you didn't know what you were missing.
That's true. Yeah, I guess their shelves always looked full even though they weren't there. But yeah.
Yeah, that like makes speaking of full, that makes me think of going to like a video store towards closing on a Friday night, like kind of that desperate, oh, I gotta rent something, but everything's out.
Yeah. And especially remember working at the video store, like, as soon as we heard that the cable went out in the town, like, the local cable went out, we were okay, in 10 minutes we're going to get slammed.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I actually remember renting a movie, and it was a new release movie, one of the ones that you could only get for the night. And then the power went out all over town because of a big storm. And I remember
Oh,
it was The Punisher, and I remember The Punisher being stuck in our VCR all weekend.
yeah, because right, you can even eject it.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's too amazing. You see, like on the internet, like on Twitter and stuff, you see people that collect VHS and they've like recreated these video stores in their houses.
Yeah, that is very cool.
They
I
have
would
like the
love to do
shelves
something
set
like that.
up and everything. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool.
You obviously were at just the right age to be able to see a ton of great stuff in the theater. And I was lucky that my parents were avid moviegoers, so I saw a ton of stuff in the theater. And since my hometown only had mom and pop theaters until I was a teenager, I saw great obscure stuff. I've talked about this a ton of times, super redundant. But is there anything like one of your favorite movie, or what's some of your favorite movies that you initially saw on rental that you did not get to see in the theater? That VHS tape was the very first time you got to see this. For example, one of mine was Dawn of the Dead. Or the
Oh,
very first time I
wow.
saw that, I rented that, and just I remember being just blown away with how good that movie. And I was in college at this point too. I just for some reason never gotten around to it, and it blew my mind how good that movie was, and that I'd been missing it all these years.
Oh, that's strange because mine is kind of a George Romero one too. I uh, first caught up with Martin on videotape,
Okay.
and I love that one, and also Night Riders.
Yeah, it's funny. I mention this so often too. Again, I'm super redundant. Martin, why does it not have a Blu-ray yet? A good one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that there was a lot of problems with Dawn of the Dead that's finally coming out, I believe, from Second Sight, but I think Romero may some of his stuff has rights issues and stuff.
I actually first saw Martin on IFC. IFC used to be a very different channel than it is now. When they actually did play independent stuff and they didn't have commercials, I mean, it was a totally different channel back then. But yeah, it was a Romero night and they played Martin. And I just taped it because it was a Romero night and I ended up being very impressed with it as well.
Yeah, and another one that kind of just blew me away was the one that you mentioned just a few minutes ago was I don't think I rented it at Blockbuster because but it was a Dead Alive or Brain
Yeah.
Dead. Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
that was something I saw. I think the place I got it from had maybe some bootleggy copy or something, but I just remember seeing that movie and it was like, oh my gosh.
Same,
Yeah.
same. Yeah, cousin rented it from Blockbuster. And like I said, it was so cut. I mean, there's just barely anything in like the whole gnome stuff in the neck. Like he was just there all of a sudden. Like it was getting stabbed into the neck was completely cut out of it. It was this weird, like, well, where'd that come from? But still loved the movie. But then I finally, when I did get to see it uncut, it was back when Best Buy, they don't have quite the movie section they used to, but Best Buy used to have a phenomenal movie selection, DVD selection. And we would actually drive from the small hometown to Atlanta, like an hour and a half, just to go to Best Buy to buy movies. And that's where I first saw that uncut Dead Alive. And it's
Oh
like,
yeah,
wow.
Best Buy used to be incredible. I remember they had hooked up with this company that was doing all the Paul Naschy films. This was
Hmm.
back when DVD first started. I remember going into Best Buy and actually had like a Paul Naschy end cap. Where they
Wow,
had all the
that's
werewolf.
impressive.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, for a while. And I remember, yeah, they used to carry all those like, little label stuff and everything in there. It used to be incredible. It was great being able to have to go buy that stuff without having to do mail order.
Yeah, we didn't get a Best Buy in my hometown for quite a while. I mean, I was shoot in my 20s, mid 20s probably before it even happened. But I remember going to the much smaller town in Florida where I would go on vacation and they had a Best Buy. And I remember I would always have to go there to stock up on movies. I remember that's where I got Bubba Hotep.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But yeah, Best Buy used to be. Same thing, we used to have a monster CD selection.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, good old days.
Yeah, yeah.
And smooth transition into subtopic number one. And that's something you suggested. And that's kind of our adult video type memories from a long time ago.
Yeah, we're getting into the adult stuff now.
Now it is the drive-in after dark.
Yep, so a little over 18 sign clicks on now.
Ding,
Click.
ding. Yep. And funnily, and why this topic transitions so well, my first, even though me pointing out how well it transitions probably makes it transition a little less well. I don't care. It One of my first memories of that sort of thing was at that movie gallery. They had a small adult section, but it was just kind of right in the middle. Like you had the new releases on the wall, and then like one row over was this adult section. You knew it was the adult section because there was a big cardboard standee cutout of a girl in a bikini, and I think the sign even said like a piece of paper taped to it that said 18 and over only in front of it.
Oh, so they didn't have the separate room or anything.
But this was my hometown, so I can just imagine it was probably just softy stuff. Probably just like Emmanuel films, probably stuff like that, bikini movies. I don't think anything really hard was even
Ah, okay.
legal at that point. But even still, that section there, and funny thinking back on it now, I did not want to have anything to do with that section. Like, I don't know, something about it, just the thought. I was like, there's something in there. Because I was real young at this point
Yeah.
that I should not be seeing. I should not be anywhere. Like, I felt uncomfortable even walking around that section.
Oh, well, you were raised right, I guess.
Right. I don't know if it's raised right, but
Right.
either way, I just now, oh man, I would love to know just what was in it.
Yeah, probably like you said, probably a lot of the Emmanuel movies and stuff, and some of the late night Skinamax stuff and everything. But that's pretty neat. They had the standee with the sign tape to her.
It's okay. Now, jumping back, you had mentioned that you had two stories involving that earlier in the pod. And what?
Yeah, when I worked at the store, I worked at a video store in Anaheim. I believe it was called Brookhurst Video, I think, and later they sold out to like a small local chain and a change in name. But I worked there a few months, and the thing about retail, you show up, you do a good job, and you act like you have half a brain, you get more responsibility pretty quick. So one day the manager comes up to me and says, Dick, I notice you're well organized. You tend to, you do a job good and you make sure it's finished. How would you like to kind of be in charge of maintaining our adult section?
Okay.
I'll do that. Then back then, it's like when you had these adult movies, you could only keep a certain amount of your inventory without running into zoning laws, I believe. So like, it was some weird number, like 18.4% of your inventory could be adult material. So I had to kind of watch all this stuff. Then once a week, this guy in this van would show up, with boxes of this stuff, and the manager would say, okay, we have X amount of dollars this week, go out there and pick out some stuff. And I would be like, oh, this looks good, and I would
Wow.
buy the
Interesting.
movies. And then the thing about the adult movies is that, you buy them new, I think, for whatever, maybe they were, I think, 20-30 bucks or whatever. They weren't as expensive, I remember, as the mainstream movies for the most part. And you'd rent them 4 or 5 times, then you turn around and sell them for 20 bucks. So it was like this huge money making thing.
Hmm.
But it was pretty cool. I had to go through there and make sure everything, and flush everything out and, get the new stuff out on display because, everyone wanted the new stuff right away.
So were these actual adult, like hard titles, or
Oh
was
yeah,
it the
it was the triple
Manuels?
X stuff. It
Okay.
was like, in the separate room and back, it was like, yeah, all the Vivid stuff and Cabrillo. It was like the 80s hardcore stuff, Christy Canyon and everything. And I actually worked there in, I believe it was at 86 when the whole Tracy Lords thing went down.
Wow, that is cool. I mean, that is, man, to work in a video store in the 80s. I mean, that's cool.
I just
I
remember we had to pull all that stuff off the rack, and we had these posters. And I remember that stuff sat in a box in the manager's office forever, all the Tracy Lord stuff, and I never found out what happened to that stuff.
I wonder. There
Yeah.
sure is a lot of that on YouTube, or not YouTube, but on the tubes right now. So
Yeah, then it was the one movie of hers we could keep because she made one like 2 days after she turned 18.
Tracy, I love you.
Yes, and that one we could keep. And yeah, so yeah, that was kind of an interesting time.
So I actually was curious about this recently. Gonna really get after dark with this topic. The Tracy Lord stuff. I've noticed just recently it has exploded over the internet again. Like you type in her name, like for a while you typed in her name, you just got more of the modern stuff, like her actual acting career. Now you type her name into Yahoo and it's all the adult stuff. So I'm wondering if like the statute of limitations on whatever that has ended, because it's everywhere now.
Really? Because I know, after all that stuff went down, they brought those movies back out, but they would either cut her scenes out or they would film different scenes with new actresses and edit them in there.
Well, these are the originals.
Oh,
Like there was
wow.
one a friend of mine had the tape of when we were teens. It's called the Peekaboo Gang, and for years the Tracy version was gone, excised. But yeah, I noticed just the other day it's back, like just in photographs. I mean, again, type Tracy Lords into Yahoo, and the results you'll be very surprised.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Someone recently did a big, I think it was the Rialto Report, did a big, long, like 8-part podcast on her that was fairly interesting.
Interesting.
Just
Yeah,
about.
I watched one documentary about her, and I mean I understand, but there was a lot of sour grapes going on.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things too about what happened that only she knows how it went down and why it went down, but I don't think we're ever going to get the straight story from her. You know, a lot of, from what I've read, a lot of the people that worked with her back when she was doing the adult, she would tell them, you know, I'm going to go on and do mainstream movies. Like, I'm going to be working at Universal one day. Then somebody would say, well, what about all this? And she said, oh, don't worry. This will all be gone one day.
Oh.
Yeah, so yeah, but I really enjoy her like post porn. I really enjoy the Not of This Earth she made,
Yeah, that's a good one.
the
Hmm.
Jim Wynorski, and she did some kind of cool cheesy action movies too. Yeah, and she was in the
Yeah.
John Waters movie.
Yeah, I've always been a fan of hers. I mean, of course, my first introduction to her was the Post stuff, like you mentioned. But yeah, I always liked her work. So, speaking of adult video stores, do you have a first memory of your first time at an adult store, or an adult video store, or anything to that effect?
I remember there was a place that opened up near me when I lived in Michigan. It was like one of the first mom and pop video stores. Then I remember they had the adult room, and I remember it was cool because they had the doorway, then it had those plastic beads
No, yeah.
that hung. So you had to go through the beads to get back to the adult room. And I remember the first one I rented was, I don't really remember the title, but I remember it had Vanessa Del Rio in it.
Okay.
And I was kind of just, oh wow, this is interesting stuff. And yeah, and a quick another fun story aside, the video store I worked at in North Carolina, they didn't have an adult section. They just had all the sleeves from the movies stuck in a notebook. Then they had the notebook sitting on the checkout counter. But
Interesting.
up above it, hanging from the ceiling, they had this big sign that said, "Adults only. Do not peruse this, you know, unless you were over 18." With this giant red arrow pointing down. So the people had to stand there at the counter, thumbing through this catalog with this giant red arrow pointing at it. It said,
Well,
"Over 18 only." You know.
they should have been like a spotlight on them at that.
Yeah, they said, you know, I'm a pervert.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of funny. Yeah, but I remember I didn't rent them often, but every so often I would just wander in there and see something that was like, oh, this looks like it might be good. Then I remember once when we got the 3D one in.
Okay. Wow.
I think it was based on Excalibur. I think it was called Sexcalibur.
Wow. And
And
it was
we had
3D, huh?
yeah, we had glasses we had to hand out and stuff. But
Wow.
yeah. Well, I've been
Fantastic.
talking a lot, Robbie. We need to let's hit you up with your X-rated videos.
Okay, my first memory, like I said, I grew up in a very small town, very Bible Belt, conservative. Like I said, actual adult stuff was not legal, at least not in video. But I remember when I first turned 18, we had one big adult store in the town, and what was it called? I want to say it was Video Fantasy was the name.
And it
And
was
it was,
just adult.
yeah, just adult stuff. And I remember I had a friend who was already 18, but he didn't drive. And so as soon as I turned 18, I drove already. He was like, "We have to go." He was so excited. And it was like this buddy bonding thing. We were going to go to Video Fantasy. So we go there one afternoon and we park, and it was really nice from the outside. And we had our heads held high. We're like, "Yeah, we're going to Video Fantasy. We're awesome." And then we go inside, and I could just feel just both of us, like the disappointment and the horror at, because it was not what we were expecting at all. And inside this Video Fantasy, not only was everything obscure, I mean, they had nothing mainstream. It was all just the most obscure, cheap, amateur, just creepy stuff. The whole place was creepy inside. Even the guy that worked at the counter, I mean, he looked exactly like what you would imagine a sleazy video store owner guy would look like. His pinky nail was like an inch long, I guess, for all the drugs and stuff. I mean, it was a mess in there. Yeah, let's say when we walked in, our heads were held high. When we walked out, we were trying to cover our faces and like moving quickly to the car, not wanting anyone to know we were in that weird place.
Yeah, wow. We still got some of those places around here.
Like really seedy, shady
Yeah,
kind?
that I drive by on the way to work. One of them, a big like kind of warehousey looking place. It's called, and it's always like I think it's called Castle Video, but it's always Castle Video and News. Like it's some respectable thing that you can go in there and buy, like a New York Times.
Right. With your filth.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm actually old enough where I got to see go to an X-rated theater.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was in
Yeah.
Detroit, and it was kind of, we walked in there, and as soon as we walked in there, it was kind of like, don't touch anything, don't make eye contact.
Don't sit down.
Yeah, kind of just sit down and run immediately home and, throw your pants in the washing machine and wash them through 3 times.
There was actually one in LA, a couple blocks from where I lived in Hollywood. And last I heard, it's probably still open to this day. And I wanted to go, but I did not want to go alone, but no one would go with me.
Oh, really?
I just wanted to go for just like you said, just getting to say that I went to an adult theater.
Yeah, because when I turned 18, that was kind of one of the rite of passage things, Okay, you can drink. We did that. Now we got to go see an adult movie because this is before videotape. So obviously the only way we could go see him. I remember what movie it was. I remember it was one of the John Holmes movies, one of those detective ones he did. What was it, Johnny Watt or whatever?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I just remember going, and it was I believe it was one of the Pussycat Theater chains down on Woodward Avenue in Detroit. And that was kind of just a rite of passage. Oh, we got to go see an adult movie. So me and like 3 buddies went.
Well, see, I wanted to go with a female friend. I bet I probably could have found a male friend to go, but I wanted to go with a female friend, and I couldn't find at least any that I would want to go with. Did not want to go.
Oh, wow. I remember the thing I remember most about the theater was that they had like, I didn't buy anything, but they had the best candy and snack selection.
Oh, well, of course. I mean, filth and candy, hand in hand.
It was just amazing. I mean, they had like it wasn't just the usual stuff like M&Ms and Twizzlers, and they had all this really cool candy that I was really impressed with their candy selection.
Oh, well, there you go. That's perfect. And on that, it's been about an hour, so I guess it's time to wrap this joker up.
Yeah, it sounds good, and I hope you folks enjoyed this, and this was a fun one to do.
Definitely. But I will squeeze in a few more shout outs, even though Ricardo already got his. I wanted to mention our good buddy and longtime supporter, Edward German. He has his own podcast now. Have you heard it yet?
I saw that. Yes, I saw the link to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the 1950s sci-fi podcast, and that's exactly what he covers is 19 different aspects of 1950s sci-fi.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, check that out because that ties into one of our previous. We did that too on one of our episodes, so I definitely want to check that out.
Yeah, they're short. They're about 15 minutes, short and sweet, but they're very entertaining. A lot of good information.
Cool. Yeah.
And
yeah.
what was his Twitter? It's like Edward German 3, right?
Think so. Yeah.
Sorry, Ed, if I got that wrong, but I'll put it in the description. And then another shout out I'd like to do to my very good buddy, Mr. Vance Capley. He always listens and supports the show, and that's you check him out at vancecapleyart.com. I do believe he's a fantastic artist, illustrator, and all around wacky fella.
Yeah, I just like to do one too to a friend of mine on Twitter, Dave Roberts. I believe he listens, and he has a great Twitter feed where he's a huge music guy, and he just has this fantastic vinyl record collection he puts up pictures of, and he's always listened to Dio and Black Sabbath and stuff. So he's a good guy.
Okay, good deal.
Good.
All right, buddy, take us out.
All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. And remember, we'll be back at some point. And remember to always venture into that back room at the video store. Who knows what you're going to find back there?